Back to this special edition of the Today Show. You are looking at a live shot of St Peter's Square where thousands have gathered, some in tears, to mourn the loss of the Pope. The Pontiff passing away from a stroke and heart failure at the age of 88, just hours after he greeted the masses on the holy day of Easter Sunday.
Let's go live to US correspondent Jonathan Kersley now, who is at St Charles Borromeo Catholic Church in LA. Jono, world leaders praising the legacy of Pope Francis.
They are joining as a voice in unison for the 1.4 billion Catholics estimated to be around the world. US President Donald Trump speaking from the White House earlier today. He was a leader who did not have the greatest of relationships with the Pope. Pope Francis was critical of his border immigration policies even as recent as February. The pair did meet back in 2017, and sometimes a picture paints 1,000 words, but still today US President Donald Trump paid tribute to the Pontiff. Here's some of what he had to say, and then asked about whether or not he will attend the Pope's funeral.
He was a good man, worked hard, he loved the world.
Donald Trump has said he does not know yet if he will be attending the funeral of Pope Francis, that he was going to be briefed on the upcoming plans, but he has lowered flags to half-mast right around this country. His Vice President J.D. Vance, the last world leader to meet the Pontiff, that took place on Easter Sunday at the Vatican, a very, very brief meeting. But the Vice President did take to social media to say that his heart goes out to the millions of Christians all around the world who loved him. The Pontiff was a leader who often prayed for peace, as so often we've seen with the head of the Catholic Church. Among the areas he prayed for peace for was Ukraine, where war has raged now for years, and Ukraine's wartime leader Volodymyr Zelensky said millions of people around the world are mourning the tragic news of Pope Francis's passing. His life was devoted to God, to people and to the Church. There's been tributes too from British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, who said that the Pope was one for the poor, the downtrodden and the forgotten. Right around the world, Catholics have been remembering and honouring the life of Pope Francis, including in his home city of Buenos Aires, where many gathered at Mass to remember the man who came from their very background to go on to be the first from the Southern Hemisphere to be the head of the Catholic Church. And now those 1.4 billion Catholics all start that journey together to say goodbye to the 266th Pope.
Welcome back to Today. The death of Pope Francis has sent shockwaves around the world, with global leaders paying their respects.
This is a live look of the Vatican this morning, where it's just past 10:20 in the evening. Mourners still gathering as preparations begin for the papal funeral. For more, we are joined now by Australian Catholic University Professor Claire Johnson from Melbourne. Professor, thanks so much for your time this morning. Now, we know Pope Francis was a modern man who tried to reform the Church. How will Catholics be remembering him this morning?
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be here. I think Catholics will be remembering him very fondly. He was very popular among Catholics and non-Catholics alike. He was progressive Pope in many ways. He tried very hard to bring the Church into consultation with the most marginalised groups, and he was very broad in his thinking about relations the Church had with other Christians around the world, and certainly other religious groups as well. He and Patriarch Bartholomew most recently were trying to come to some sort of an agreement on celebrating the date of Easter on the same day between the east and west parts of the Church. So very progressive in many ways, and he'll be greatly missed.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, Claire? We do see the role of the Pope more in recent times become almost a political one. How much power does a Pope wield in terms of reshaping the public discourse?
Well, he has 1.4 billion Catholics to sway, I think, with his position on things. This Pope was highly intelligent, a Jesuit, a man of great learning, and very capable of manoeuvring gently between whatever parties he was trying to bring into the conversation. And he certainly engaged lots of different groups in discussing things in a way that is unprecedented, really. His whole approach to synodality within the Catholic Church itself was something that was a breakthrough, really, in terms of less of a hierarchical church and more of a consultative church.
The next phase is one that's intrigued so many people, even if they aren't of the Catholic faith, and movies have been based on it, TV shows, books. The protocols from here on and the election of a new Pope. What happens from this point?
So from this point, we move into the period of mourning. So the Pope's funeral will take place between 4 and 6 days after his death. We're in the Easter season, so it's a lovely time to be celebrating his resurrected life, which we will be praying for him for. And so the funeral will take place between 4 and 6 days after his death, and then no more than 15 days after his death, the conclave will be held. So there's a bit of time in between where the Chamberlain, the Camerlengo, Cardinal Kevin Farrell, will be running things in the Vatican, keeping things running smoothly, and preparing for the conclave. So there are lots of happenings at the moment, and it's an interesting interregnum, the time in between one pope and the next pope.
Yeah, amazing circumstances indeed. Thank you so much, Claire Johnson from the Australian Catholic University.
And look, the messages for the Pope are coming in from around the world. King Charles says he and Queen Camilla have heavy hearts after Pope Francis's death. In a statement, the monarch said although they are deeply saddened by the pontiff's passing, they were relieved he was able to share an Easter greeting with the Church, adding the Pope will be remembered for his compassion, his concern for the unity of the Church, and for his tireless commitment to the common causes of all people of faith and to those of goodwill who work for the benefit of others. Charles went on to say, the Queen and I remember with particular affection our meetings with His Holiness over the years, and we were greatly moved to have been able to visit him earlier in the month. Now to our US correspondent, Jonathan Kersley at St. Charles Borromeo Catholic Church in Los Angeles. Jono, good morning to you. Leaders around the world are mourning Pope Francis.
They are, as the bells toll here at St. Charles Borromeo Church in Los Angeles. US President Donald Trump spoke from the White House earlier today. He was a world leader who had a fraught relationship with the Pope. They met back in 2017. Pope Francis had criticised his plans for a border wall, and as recently as February, he'd outed his renewed immigration plans. But speaking earlier from the White House, America's Commander-in-Chief had this to say in tribute to the Pontiff.
He was a good man, worked hard, he loved the world.
Donald Trump says he does not know yet if he plans to attend the funeral service of Pope Francis, but he did say that flags across the country will be lowered at half-mast. His Vice President J.D. Vance was the last of the world leaders to meet with Pope Francis, that taking place on Easter Sunday, just a matter of hours before his passing. The Vice President took to social media to say, "My heart goes out to the millions of Christians all over the world who loved him. I was happy to see him yesterday, though he was obviously very ill." Tributes too from former US President Barack Obama, who said Pope Francis was the rare leader who made us want to be better people. Pope Francis often prayed for peace around the world, in places none more so than Ukraine. That country's wartime leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, also joining the chorus of world leaders paying tribute to say he knew how to give hope, ease suffering through prayer and foster unity. He prayed for peace in Ukraine and for Ukrainians. World leaders really trying to get a sense of who Pope Francis was and portray that to the world. Sir Keir Starmer saying Pope Francis was a pope for the poor, the downtrodden and the forgotten. That the British Prime Minister giving his statement there. In Pope Francis's home city of Buenos Aires in Argentina, there have been mourners also reflecting on the life of the man who was 88 when he passed. There are 1.4 billion Catholics estimated right around the world, and they are now starting the long journey to say goodbye to the world's 266th Pope. Ali?
US correspondent Jonathan Kersley in Los Angeles. Thank you, Jono.